Hello lovely people, welcome back to my channel. I'm Adibimpe from Style by Binta, and today in this video tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make this beautiful elastic waist pant trouser. It's going to be having a fancy rope or a jogger's rope, and it's going to be coming out as neat and perfectly made as you're seeing. So this particular part of this video is all about the band, how I created this band. So the first thing I'd like you to do for me, if you're coming across my video for the first time and you're interested in content like this, is to please like this video, subscribe to this channel, turn on your notification button so as for you to get notified when I upload new videos. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is to determine the circumference of my new waist now. So the waist, I measure around it, or you can place it like this and measure straight up if you are sure you get an accurate result, but it's better to measure around it from the front to the back, then to the front again. Whatever you have, add 3 inches to it. The 3 inches for sewing allowance. I'm going to show how we are going to use it up. You are not going to use it straight up at once like that. So I try to measure it like this, and I got 20 inches, and I measure around 2 and I got 40 inches. So 40 divided by 2 is 20 inches. In this case, I'm going to be adding 3 inches to the 40 inches. So it's going to be giving me 43 inches. So I went ahead and I cut it out. This is what I had. So the width I'm working with is the size of my elastic plus ½ inch for sewing. So I'm going to be placing it on fold. So the size of my elastic is 2 inches plus ½ inch, which is 2.5 inches. Then I have to place it on fold, which means 2.5 inches in 2 places, which is going to give me 5 inches. So I'm working with 5 inches as the width, while the length is 43 inches. But when placed on fold, I'll have the length of 21.5 inches by the width of 2.5 inches. So all I did was to place the elastic on the fabric, or you measure it out, then add your stitch allowance to the side. So in this case, I'm working with ½ inch stitch allowance. So the width of my elastic, I just place it directly. You can measure it and mark it on your fabric. I just place it directly on the fabric, leaving the space of ½ inch, which is going to be for the stitch allowance. So my fabric is still on fold. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to come in by 2.5 inches from the opened edge, and I'm going to be marking it. So the next thing I did was to come in again from that point by 1 inch, just as you can see. So I'm going to be ruling a straight line on the both points. So I came in first by 2.5 inches. So from that point, I came in again by 1 inch, and I ruled a straight line on it, just as you can see. So the next thing I did was to fold it up, just as you can see from the edge, and I notch it. And I did the same thing on the 4 edges of the ruled line. This is just for me to have that line replaced even at the other side of the piece, just as you can see. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to stitch on this piece following that line, but I'm not just going to do it straight up. I'm going to go to the sewing machine and show you how it is. So the next thing I did was to fold these 2 lines notch to notch, just as you can see. So the next thing I did was from the very edge, I measured 3/4 inch, which is 0.75. I made a point there. Then from that point, I measured ½ inch. Then I another point there, just as you can see. So this ½ inch that I marked out like that is where the rope is eventually going to be passing through. So I'm not going to be stitching on it. I'm going to be jumping it. So I'm going to be stitching from the 3/4 inch I earlier marked, and I'm going to be securing my stitch so that it won't rip off eventually by reversing my stitch on it. Then I continue from where the other mark is, and I stitch down as well, securing my stitch also at that point. The next thing I did was to slit this ½ inch stitch that I made. Then the opening is going to become visible, just as you can see. So the next thing you have to do is to take your hemi gum, use it on the both sides, and give it a good press so as for it to lay flat. You can stitch on it, but I want a neater look. So I'm going to be repeating the same process for the other side. I'm going to be stitching on the notch part, just as you can see. But in the process, I will ensure that the side that this opening is falling to on the first side is where it must fall to on the second side. Else, one of the opening is going to be falling to the inside of your trouser, while the other is going to be falling to the outside, and that is not a good result. So having checked the side where the opening should be, I basically just repeat the same process. I mark 3/4 inch, make a point there, mark half of an inch, make a point there also, then stitch the remaining part. So I started my stitch from the 3/4 of an inch I earlier marked, then I jumped the half of an inch, then I continue my stitch all through, just as I did for the first. So the next thing I did was to slit it open. So this is what I have. You can have access to your jogger's rope like this. Then I took my hemi comb and I gave it a good press with the head of a iron. So this is the result I had. Just as you can see, it's laying flat and neat, and you can have access to the joggers hole. Just as you can see, the space is falling to the same side on both sides of this piece, just as you can. So having done these two processes, 2 inches out of the 3 inches I initially added to the circumference of the trouser is already gone, so I'm left with 1 inch now. When I measured this band, I had 20.5 instead of 20 inches because it's on fold. 1 inch on fold will be half of an inch, so all I had to do was to stitch the half of an inch away from it. So I'm done with the stitch allowance of the 3 inches that I added earlier. So I'm going to proceed and give it a good press also to lay it flat. So what I have here when laid open going to be 40 inches if I measure it round, but on fold is 20 inches. So the next thing I did was to take this piece that I've been working on since and join it to the waist of my trouser itself. So I'm going to determine which part I want to be outside and which part I want to be inside. If you want your jogger's rope to be seen on the outside, then the part where there is opening for the jogger's rope to pass through is the part that is going to be on the outside, just as you can see. If you don't want your jogger's rope to be seen on the outside, the part where there is spacing for the jogger's rope to pass through is going to be on the inside. But in this case, I want the jogger's rope to be seen on the very outside, so I'm going to ensure that the part where the holes for the jogger's rope to pass through is on the outside. So here are the 3 stitches that I had on this piece. The one in between is the one that doesn't have a hole in it at all. It is this that just brought the whole piece together as one. That is the one that is going to be going to the crotch line on the trouser itself. So I'm going to align this stitch together with the crotch stitch on the trouser itself, just as you can see, which is going to be the center front of my trouser. So I'm going to ensure that the stitch on the casing for the elastic that does not have any hole in it is the one going to this center front stitch on the trouser itself, just as you can see. The next thing I did was to stitch all through, ensuring that the fabric was not excess. As you can see, I left a spacing of about 2 inches, so this is where the elastic is going to be passing through, just as you can see. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to insert the elastic. So the next thing I did was to measure the waistband. As we know, it is going to be 20 on fold because this fabric is not laid flat all through, it is laying on each other. So I had 20 inches. So for the elastic I'm going to be working with, I'm going to be doing the reduction of, if it is on fold, I'm going to be using the reduction of about 3 inches. So when I open it, that means 3 inches times 2, which is going to be the reduction of 6 inches. Whatever you are working with, just ensure it's not going to be too tight. But for me, this is what I do mostly, and it really works. So whatever you do to pass it through is up to you. Make use of whatever you have. So the next thing I did was to place the edge of my elastic on each other, not side by side but over each other, just as you can see. Then I run my stitch on it twice just to secure my elastic. Then I adjust it back into the elastic case. So this is how it looks like after adjusting it back. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to spread it out, just as you can see, so as for the fabric to be evenly spread around the elastic, just as you can see. So the next thing I will do is to close that 2 inches opening where I pass the elastic through. So I went ahead and I stitch it without holding down your elastic. So this is what I have after that. So as you can see, this is a good result, and a lot of people will leave it like this, but it's not the best. I don't recommend you leave it like this, because over time this elastic is going to be turning on its own and is not the best. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to stitch all around this band. I'm going to be stitching it all around twice, leaving some spacing in between where the joggers rope is going to pass through. So this little space created for the joggers rope to pass through, I'm going to be marking around it, and my stitch is not going to be passing through those holes. So I'm the starting point and the ending point of the opening, so that I will not stitch on the opening itself. I'm going to be following this mark to stitch all around the band. So before I proceed, to get my elastic stable, I am going to stitch in 4/4 so as just to stabilize the elastic. So I'm going to be following all my 4 stitches on the trouser itself and doing a sort of top stitch all around in those 4 places. These stitches are going to be losing eventually. I'm going to have to lose all these 4 stitches, because if I don't lose it, the joggers rope is not going to be able to pass around. So this is just to secure the elastic, so that while I'm top stitching and stretching out the elastic together with the clothes, fabric will not be shifting more to one side than the other side. So the next thing I'm going to do is to proceed with the top stitching all around the band. So having secured the elastic to the fabric itself in 4 places, so I have the waist divided into 4/4 like that. So I'll be able to exhaust the elastic on one section before moving to the other section without disorganizing the spread of the fabric to the elastic, just as you can see. So in the process, all I have to do is to stitch and stretch the elastic to the fabric itself. Just as you can see, you're not expected to stitch on your fabric while the fabric is still in a folded position. So you have to stretch it through, just as you can see. So this is the result I have after top stitching all around twice. Just as you can see, it's looking so nice. It is a good place to stop, but I'm not going to be stopping here. I'm going to be passing my joggers rope all around. So whatever method you find easy to pass it through, please do. So in this case, I'm working with a pin, so I'm going to be passing it through with the help of a pin. So as you can see, while passing it through, the top stitch I made in 4/4 of the waistband is going to stop the passage of the pin. So I had to lose it in the 4 places where I had a top stitch. So I went ahead and I loosened it, just as you can see, so as for the pin and the joggers rope to be able to pass around the waistband, just as you can see. So this is the result I have, and you can see it is very neat and beautiful. You can give this a try, and I'm sure you will have this result if you follow my step. So here comes to the end of the tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. If you've gained anything at all from the beginning of this video till now, I'd like you to please like this video, subscribe to my channel, share this video to people who can be interested in it, and leave a comment for me. Thanks so much, and see you in my next video. Bye.